Hi, my name is Skylar Moe. I am in Physics 2211, and today I will be presenting what I learned from the public lecture Pearls of Wisdom, the Geometry and Topology of Weavables, Wearables, and Wallpaper from November 28, 2016. And the public lecture was presented by Professor Matsumoto. The main point of this public lecture was to discuss the geometry and topology of Weavables, Wearables, and Wallpaper, and other patterns in general. So to start off, the lecture began by Professor Matsumoto examining the different types of symmetries that can be found in everyday designs, such as the flags of different countries. The main types of symmetries that were discussed were reflection, translation, and rotation, which we have definitely heard before. We have learned these symmetries in geometry class or even as early as elementary or middle school. After reviewing the basic types of symmetry, Professor Matsumoto talked about how you can turn a 2D object into a 3D object by using a piece of paper. She pretty much used a piece of paper it was a circle, and she would add something to it to create a different 3D object, or remove a piece and then maneuver it to create another 3D object. And after Professor Matsumoto finished talking about the different shapes, she began to talk about specific formulas, and more specifically, she talked about Euler's formula, which we have learned before in calculus. And you can use that to calculate the different identities of clothing, such as the number of holes or the number of vectors in the clothing. And I thought this was really interesting to learn because she mentioned that you can use this formula to figure out how your clothing will look before even beginning to create it. And I enjoyed watching this lecture, and I chose to watch this lecture because it introduced everyday ideas in an interesting way and opened up my perspective, because I never thought about something like this when designing clothing or wearable technology, and it's something that you definitely have to take into account. And also, before attending this lecture, I thought that wearable technology was an interesting concept and something that I wanted to learn more about, so I was very excited to watch this lecture. And throughout the lecture, Professor Matsumoto talked a lot about the physical qualities of wearable technology. And I wanted to add on to this by talking about how heat is transferred throughout wearable technology. So obviously, heat plays a role, or surface area plays a big role in heat transfer, and Professor Matsumoto talks specifically about the surface area of clothing, which is very relative to heat transfer. And it is required that all wearable technology should not heat up past a certain temperature, because it can burn the consumers and cause permanent damage to their skin, which is clearly unwanted. And there's actually a lot of research that goes into making wearable technology, because they have to ensure that the clothing will not heat up too high and it will be fit for the consumer. The research has to take into account how heat will be transferred throughout the clothing when an electronic device is on your body. So you have to make sure that the electronic device won't heat up the clothing too high, or that the clothing isn't capable of reaching that temperature with the electronic device under it. And overall, I thought this lecture was very interesting to find out all about the calculations, formulas, and knowledge that goes into designing wearable technology. Thank you.